Now we're going to take a look at some special cases, starting with children of catechetical age or the age of reason. So as we determined earlier, right, the church sees the age of reason as to be about 7 years old. Um, for for children of catechetical age, the RCIA needs to be adapted. There is no specific RCIC program, so there's no rite of Christian initiation for children. That's not a thing. The RCIA already gives us some guidance on adapting the material, and that it needs to be the guidance is that it needs to be adapted for the age that the child's at. So appropriately adapted by their age. The materials and activities need to be adapted. The RCIA encourages that children be with their peers. So that might look like then in a parish setting that child, right, between the ages of 7 and 17 would, or 18 depending, would be included in regular religious education or youth formation with supplementary formation as necessary. So it's really important that they still get to be with their peers. Another way to do that might be, or additional way to do that would be to help them find other families that they can participate with. In the same way, they'll still have, right, godparents, but helping them find peers that can be those role models for them too, already Christian and Catholic peers. Younger children can celebrate children's liturgy of the word, depending on how, what age groups you use for that. And then all 3 sacraments of initiation need to be completed at the Easter Vigil, not just baptism. So again, they're at the age of reason. We consider them adults. There is no specific children's program. So they're going to follow the steps of the adults in RCIA and be fully initiated at the Easter Vigil. The next case to look at is baptized but uncatechized Catholics or other Christians. So these persons have been baptized but didn't complete First Communion or confirmation for whatever reason. This formation is really dependent upon the person and the situation. So the intake that Jonathan talks about is so important in determining what's going to happen. Every situation really is different. Sometimes they might need to be included in formation with the unbaptized, for maybe specific topics, depending on where they're at in their catechesis and formation. But they should be included in formation with other baptized persons for sure. Again, they've been baptized. They're already believers. They believe in Christ. They need to be formed with other Christians. And next will be the Eastern Christians. So the Church, the Roman Catholic Church, recognizes the validity of the sacraments of the Eastern Orthodox. So they may already worship with us. Usually they've received all 3 sacraments of initiation. And then per the Code of Canons of Eastern Churches, an Eastern Christian received into the church is automatically a member of the corresponding Eastern Catholic Church. Example, Greek, Byzantine, Russian Orthodox. So when they're received and they receive the sacraments here, when they're received into full communion, they are actually automatically a member of the Eastern Church. So that takes some more digging and intake and conversation with that person to figure out which one of those it's going to be, because there's a lot of them. After reception, they may transfer to the Latin Church with permission of both bishops or the Apostolic See, but that's not necessary. A pastor has full authority to receive them. Formation is to be tailored to the individual, as we spoke before about baptized but uncatechized. So you're going to have varying levels depending on the person of formation that might need to be completed. But all they need to do is a simple profession of faith at the end of that formation. That's all that's required for full communion. There are no other rituals. They don't take part in any other rites. It is just a simple profession of faith. What is important and often gets missed, because they just kind of slip in under, usually we do the profession of faith and then it's done. But there should be some sort of hospitality, especially if it's a new parishioner. Maybe you have a welcome committee that can reach out to them, or they can be included in some other way. But there should be hospitality and celebration for them coming into full communion. The next section is persons with special needs. So that one takes a bit more time. If we thought intake took a while before, intake for this definitely also takes some pastoral care and time. This is dialogue with the parents or guardians of the person with special needs to determine the best course of action and sacramental preparation. Because you have to come up with a plan. So persons with special needs are to be included in the sacramental life of the church and in the faith community, but they need individualized catechesis plans suitable to their capabilities and appropriate learning styles. So how you might come up with that would be to seek out parishioners that can assist in adapting materials and activities to support them. So there might be catechists or teachers or disability specialists, nurses, other parents or guardians caring for someone with similar needs already in the parish might be able to help that family get the person with special needs through the sacraments, because they already know what that's like and have to deal with those same situations. So again, reaching out and using the community to help you come up with what that plan is going to look like as well. Because there are definitely specialists in those areas. And then the website provides, we have some resources there, as you can see the link there, that will help. So then next case will be a catechumen marrying a Catholic before initiation. So that definitely does happen. Someone has a spouse that that isn't a Catholic. So you would use the order for celebrating matrimony between a Catholic and a catechumen or non-Christian. Because again, the catechumen rite is not baptized, so they're treated as a non-Christian in the sacrament of marriage. This sacrament, it's not a sacrament. It would take place in a liturgy of the word, and then have the celebration of matrimony. Again, the marriage will not be a sacrament since it requires that both the bride and groom be baptized. It will be a valid marriage, but just non-sacramental, as long as the couple has received permission and proper dispensation from the bishop. So then the question is, when or can it become a sacramental marriage? Yes, if permission has been received from the bishop and a proper dispensation with permission, then again, it's valid but non-sacramental. It becomes sacramental the moment the catechumen is baptized, because then they're both baptized. So that's to me, it's very amazing, but it's a very important point. So before that, it was valid and non-sacramental. After the catechumen's baptism, it is now a sacramental marriage.
The next special case we want to look at is a catechumen who is in danger of death or who even dies before receiving the sacraments of initiation. If you have a catechumen who is gravely ill and there's a decent chance that they are not going to live for very long, if there's time, the priest should celebrate what is called the abbreviated form of the RCIA. We'll talk a little bit more about the abbreviated form in just a few minutes. But this can be used as a way to progress someone through the formation fairly quickly so that they can receive baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist. If death is imminent, a priest, deacon, or even a lay person can use what is called the Christian initiation of a person in danger of death, which again can be found in the RCIA text, which includes a celebration of baptism. If there is a priest there, they can do confirmation. And then if available, there's also the opportunity then for them to receive viaticum. They're, in this case, most likely first and last communion before they pass away. If a catechumen dies before receiving baptism, and that does happen, accidents and things, they may again celebrate a Christian funeral because they have already been received into the life of the church. They have a right to receive a Christian burial, even though they have not been baptized yet. If you cannot verify whether a potential candidate for full communion with the church has received a valid baptism, we really need to do our due diligence and try to really exhaust every avenue to see whether or not that baptism was valid. Again, the church esteems baptism so much that we never want to accidentally even baptize someone twice, because that first baptism would be valid. We don't want to try to do it again. So if you can't determine whether a baptism is valid, there's other ways to do that besides just getting a baptismal certificate. If you can find a witness who was there at the baptism and they can attest to that the baptism was valid, that's an okay. We can accept that. If you can get a signed affidavit from the minister or again from a witness, something like that, that is valid proof as well that a baptism is valid. If and only if you've exhausted every avenue of investigation, only then do we celebrate what is called conditional baptism, which is a formula of baptism that basically says, if you have not been baptized before, then I baptize you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. But it's important to note that conditional baptism is not just something we do just because we haven't exhausted every avenue. We really try to investigate everything we can about the validity of the baptism before we would decide to do a conditional baptism. What happens if a member of the elect misses the Easter Vigil? Again, emergencies do happen. Sometimes things happen, people get sick and they can't make it to the vigil. In that case, we want to celebrate the sacraments of initiation with them as soon as possible afterwards, ideally at a Sunday Mass in Easter. If not, at least sometime during the Easter season, we want to get that done. But it should not be put off for very long. The state, when someone celebrates the rite of election, it's essentially a statement saying this person is going to be baptized within the next 40 or so days. So most experts I've read even say that if something happens and they miss the Easter Vigil and they're not going to get to celebrate the sacraments of initiation for 3 months, you probably have to do the rite of election again. Contact the bishop, get permission to celebrate the rite of election in the parish, and then undergo that whole 40-day period of purification and enlightenment again to prepare to receive those sacraments. But the important thing is, if they have to miss the vigil, do those sacraments of initiation as quickly as possible. Again, the ideal would be at a Sunday Mass during the Easter season so it could be celebrated with the community. What happens if a catechumen's annulment has not been concluded before the rite of election? Well, then we would not send them to the rite of election. Again, we never make promises about time frames and things like that, except once we've celebrated the rite of election, that is a declaration that this individual will be baptized at the next Easter Vigil. So if we're not sure if that process of annulment is going to be completed by then, we shouldn't send them for the rite of election. Now, let's say someone doesn't celebrate then the rite of election, but during the Lenten season, that annulment does come through, or even right after Easter, that annulment is concluded. In that case, contact the Office of Divine Worship, talk to Sandra. There is a process to go ahead and complete initiation without having to wait a whole nother year before the next Easter Vigil, but contact the Office of Divine Worship to get what that process is, and Sandra can walk you through that to make sure we're following all the proper procedures there. And then finally, there is what is called the abbreviated form of the RCIA. This is for use in exceptional circumstances, and I really do mean exceptional circumstances, such that it requires the bishop's permission to use the abbreviated form. Essentially, it's an extremely condensed process of formation leading up to the sacraments of initiation. But the RCIA text itself really warns against using it unless it's absolutely necessary, because it can mean a spiritual loss for the candidates who is deprived of the benefits of a longer preparation for the sacraments of initiation. So the bishop would probably only really give permission for the use of the abbreviated form in circumstances such as extreme illness, someone who is very old and may not be able to go through an entire full process, or a soldier embarking on a tour of duty. Those would be circumstances in which the bishop might give permission for use of the abbreviated form. The current process for getting that permission is to contact the Office of the Vicar General and request that permission. A form is being created for that. but we will update that process as that new form comes through. But in the meantime, just contact the Office of the Vicar General or contact Sandra, and they can walk you through that process.